He's a coward. I could cheat again, and he'd still stay, she bragged to her friend, thinking I'd never hear. So I packed my bags, left without a word. Now she's homeless, broke, and begging, and all I gave her was the silence she deserved. Hey, Reddit. My ex thought she could cheat, downgrade, and still keep me as her backup plan. I walked away, rebuilt my life, and never looked back. But she couldn't stand that. What happened next was a slow, glorious train wreck I didn't even have to lift a finger for. Let's start from the beginning. I'm Levi. I'm 29, work as an operations manager for a mid-sized software company, and I've always liked to think I had my life lined up neatly. Steady job, decent apartment, gym 3 times a week, the occasional weekend trip with friends. For 3 years, I'd also had a girlfriend, Stella. She was the classic, smart and charming type, the kind you picture building a future with. We shared a place, split the bills, talked vaguely about marriage. It all looked solid from the outside. Then, about 6 months ago, something shifted. It was small at first. A few too many girls' nights popping up on the calendar, a sudden obsession with outfits that didn't really line up with the weather, and her phone glued to her hand like it contained nuclear launch codes. When I asked how her day was, she stopped giving actual answers. When I suggested we plan a trip, she said she was too busy. The most obvious red flag was her best friend, Aria. She'd never been my biggest fan. In her words, I was predictable, safe, the type of guy who folds laundry on Friday nights. It was meant as an insult, but I never minded much. That is, until Stella started echoing Aria's, "Maybe you need more excitement" lines, almost word for word. Aria had always been chaos in heels, and I could feel her influence creeping deeper into our lives. I started paying attention. I'm not the type to snoop through phones or follow people around. I'd rather look at behavior patterns. And the pattern was clear. She laughed at texts and tilted the screen away when I walked into the room. Work drinks started ending after midnight. Her perfume became more expensive and more frequent, but only on nights she wasn't with me. She suddenly started going to the gym at odd hours. Alone. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being auditioned for the role of backup option. Call it gut instinct or self-preservation. But I knew something was off. I wasn't going to be the guy who found out by accident. I wanted certainty. So I planned a little experiment. 2 weeks later, I told Stella I'd be away on a short business trip. Meetings, client visits, all that. She barely blinked, just mumbled something about ordering Thai takeout and binging a new series. Perfect. I booked a cheap hotel across town and waited. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't even check in. On the second night, around 9 p.m., I drove back to our neighborhood and parked across the street, a few cars down from the entrance. Just a cold, focused calm. At 9:37, a car I didn't recognize pulled up. Out stepped a guy I'd never seen before. Tall, overgelled hair, smug posture. He pressed the intercom. A few seconds later, the door buzzed open, and Stella appeared, smiling like a teenager meeting her crush at a concert. She threw her arms around him, kissed him right there in the doorway, then led him inside. That was Carson, though I didn't know his name then. I sat there for a while, long enough to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Time-stamped, geotagged, indisputable. Evidence wasn't the point. I had no plans to blow it up online or make a dramatic confrontation. I just needed the truth, and now I had it. I drove back to the hotel and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I'd spent 3 years being the steady hand, the safe harbor, the man who handled every crisis and held things together. And for what? So she could get bored and chase a spark? I thought about Aria, about how she once called me the human equivalent of a seatbelt. It was meant as a jab. Sitting there in that hotel room, I decided it was a compliment. Seatbelts save lives, but they also lock you into place. And I was done being buckled into someone else's ride. By the time I checked out the next morning, my decision was made. There would be no screaming match, no begging for explanations. Stella could keep her little secret, for now. But she wasn't dating a fool. She was dating a man who now had the full picture. I spent the next few days going about life as usual. Work, gym, dinner. Stella acted normal too, probably relieved I hadn't found out. She didn't notice the subtle distance, the way I stopped asking questions or offering weekend plans. And she definitely didn't notice the small storage boxes accumulating in the closet, one labeled with my initials. By the end of that month, my course was locked in. My next move wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be an exit, clean, deliberate, and final. And for the first time in weeks, I actually felt calm. Because once the truth shows itself, the rest is just logistics. 2 weeks passed like nothing had changed. Stella still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still asked what I wanted for dinner, still sent me memes like everything was fine, and I still played the part of the dependable boyfriend, smiling, making coffee, asking about her day. Only difference was, now I was counting down the days until I was gone. I spent those 2 weeks setting up my exit. I updated my resume and reached out to a recruiter I knew from a conference. I transferred a few recurring bills from our joint account to my personal one. At night, while Stella scrolled through her phone, I quietly packed a box or two of things I wouldn't miss. It was calm, methodical work. I didn't want to leave in chaos. I wanted precision. Then, one night, precision met opportunity. I came home earlier than usual. A team meeting had been canceled, and when I stepped into the hallway, I heard Stella's voice echoing down from our bedroom. She was on speakerphone. I was about to call out a hello, but something in her tone stopped me cold. No, I'm serious, Arya. Carson's just different. Her voice had that excited, breathless edge I hadn't heard in months. And never about me. Levi's fine. He's stable, reliable, all that crap. But he's not it. You were right. I deserve more than just playing house with Mr. Predictable. I stood there, back pressed against the wall, listening. Arya's laugh came through the speaker. I told you. Guys like Levi are seatbelts. They keep you locked in place. Safe, boring, predictable. They don't leave. They cling harder when you pull away. Stella laughed too. Exactly. Honestly, I could cheat again, and he'd still stay. He's too boring to leave me. I didn't move. I didn't slam the door or burst into the room. I just let the words land and settle like a final nail in a coffin I'd already built. That was the moment any trace of love I had left evaporated. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was contempt, and contempt was irreversible. I slipped back out quietly, walked to a cafe nearby, and ordered a black coffee I didn't even want. I sat there for an hour, replaying those words until they lost all weight. If she thought I was too boring to leave, she was about to learn how wrong she was. A week later, I made my move. Let's do something nice this weekend, I suggested over dinner on a Wednesday. It's been a while since we went out, just the two of us. Her eyes lit up. Ooh, like a date? Exactly, I said, keeping my tone casual. I'll make a reservation. I picked a sleek upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where people celebrate anniversaries or proposals. Stella spent hours getting ready, slipping into a new dress and heels I'd never seen before. She looked at herself in the mirror with the kind of excitement you reserve for a major life event. Any hints? She asked on the drive over. Nope, I said. Just enjoy the night. Dinner went smoothly at first. She was all smiles and small talk, talking about vacation ideas, future plans, the possibility of getting a dog. I nodded, offered polite replies, and let her build castles in the air. Then dessert arrived. I reached into my jacket pocket and slid my phone across the table. The screen showed a single photo, her at our apartment door, greeting Carson with a kiss. Silence. Her smile vanished. The color drained from her face. What is this? She stammered. Evidence, I said, calmly folding my hands on the table. I don't date liars, and I definitely don't stay with people who think cheating is a favor. Levi, it's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. My voice stayed even, almost bored. You invited someone else into the home we built together. Then you bragged about it to your friend. I'm not interested in your excuses. Her eyes widened. You heard that? I did. Every word. The panic came fast. First tears, then denial, then blame. Why were you eavesdropping? That's insane. Do you know how toxic that is? You're trying to control me. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Control you? Stella, you were talking about how you could cheat again, and I'd still stay. That's not control. That's arrogance. She tried another tactic. I made a mistake, okay? But we can work through this. We're good together. No, I was good. You were careless. Her phone buzzed then, a message from Arya, no doubt getting a live update. A second later, my own buzzed. Arya, you're a misogynist control freak. No wonder she needed excitement. I stared at the screen for a moment before replying, if I wanted comedy, I'd turn on Netflix. I stood up. Stella reached for my wrist. Wait, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I set a few bills on the table to cover the check. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I walked out before she could say another word. As I stepped into the cool night air, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Light. Not happy, not triumphant, just free. For the first time since this whole thing started, I was completely done. Behind me, through the restaurant window, Stella was still sitting there in her perfect dress, staring at the photo on my phone like it was evidence from a trial she didn't realize she'd lost months ago. The truth was simple. Predictable men don't explode. They don't beg. They don't scream. They just walk away and never look back. And that was exactly what I planned to do. The morning after the dinner, the apartment felt different. Not louder or colder, just hollow. Stella barely spoke when I left for work, and I didn't bother saying goodbye. The line between us had already been drawn. I knew I couldn't keep living there long. It wasn't about being dramatic, it was about peace. So I decided I'd give it a couple of weeks to get my things in order, then leave for good. During that time, I'd move quietly, deliberately, and without giving her any ammunition. Those 2 weeks were weird. Those 2 weeks were tense. She alternated between gaslighting, you're throwing away 3 years over one mistake, and love bombing, cooking elaborate dinners, folding my laundry, pretending we were still a team. I gave her nothing. No arguments, no explanations, just silence. The more I stayed quiet, the more frantic she got. I started packing slowly, one box at a time. Clothes, books, my laptop setup, anything sentimental, I left. By the second week, I had most of my essentials stacked neatly in the corner of the living room. I left a note on the counter before heading to work. I'll be moving out by the end of the month. Until then, I'd appreciate space. We have nothing to discuss. She didn't respond directly, but I could feel the panic and how clingy she became. One night, she tried to initiate a serious talk. I know I messed up, she said, teary-eyed, but we can work on this. Couples go through worse. Then maybe you should find one of those couples, I replied calmly, shutting down the conversation. By the third weekend, I was done. A moving van pulled up outside, and I loaded my boxes quietly while Stella hovered in the hallway. She didn't yell. She didn't apologize again. She just watched, still clinging to the delusion that I might come back. I placed my keys on the counter without a word, walked out, and closed the door behind me. Just like that, 3 years ended in silence. With the living situation resolved, I turned my focus fully on myself. First came the physical side. The gym became a daily ritual. 6 a.m., no excuses. I lifted heavier, ran faster, and pushed myself harder than ever. 3 months later, I dropped weight, built muscle, and looked sharper than I had in years. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming discipline. Work followed. I poured myself into new projects, volunteered for extra initiatives, and delivered results that got noticed. That's when my boss called me in. There's an opening in our West Coast office, he said. Senior operations lead. Bigger team, more visibility. Interested? I didn't need time to think. I'm in. The timing couldn't have been better. A fresh city, a new apartment, a life built entirely on my terms. It wasn't running away. It was scaling up. Of course, Stella didn't vanish quietly. The text started within days, casual at first, then nostalgic, then desperate. When I blocked her, she made burner accounts. When that didn't work, Aria slid into my LinkedIn claiming Stella needed closure. I replied once, tell her I hope her SoundCloud blows up. Then I blocked her too. But none of that compared to what happened at a mutual friend's wedding later that summer. By the time spring rolled around, my life had shifted into high gear. I was thriving in the new city, settling into my role as senior operations lead, and my days were full. Meetings, gym sessions, weekends exploring places I'd never been. Stella was nothing more than a footnote in my story. But on her end, things were beginning to crumble fast. I didn't follow her directly. No hate watching her social media, no late-night curiosity scrolls. But mutual friends talk, and snippets of her life made their way to me whether I wanted them or not. And every update was more pathetic than the last. It started with her dream life with Carson, the same guy she described as exciting, magnetic, full of life. They'd moved in together a few weeks after I left, apparently into the same apartment we'd once shared. From what I heard, the honeymoon phase was over almost immediately. Carson had been working part-time when they started dating. 2 months after they moved in, he quit altogether. He told her he was going to focus on his music full-time. And that sounded noble at first. Stella bragged online about being the supportive girlfriend of an artist. But focusing on music quickly turned into playing video games, sleeping until noon, and networking at bars 4 nights a week. Rent was due? Stella paid it. Groceries? Stella. Gas? Wi-Fi? Studio equipment? Stella. And to afford it, she maxed out 2 credit cards and drained her savings. All while working late shifts at a job she hated. And then, just when things couldn't look worse for her, they did. Carson started spending a lot of creative time with one of the girls from his band, a 22-year-old singer he described as his artistic muse. Within weeks, word got around that they were hooking up. Stella found out the way people like her always do, by reading the wrong text on the wrong phone at the wrong time. I heard from a mutual friend that the fallout was ugly. She threw him out, then begged him to come back. He left anyway. A few weeks later, they were seen together again, until he ghosted her completely and vanished from her life. Meanwhile, Arya's perfect influencer-style relationship had also gone down in flames. Her boyfriend dumped her after finding out she'd been messaging other guys on the side. She went on social media rants about toxic men and commitment phobes, the usual script, but the damage was done. With both their romantic lives in shambles, the dynamic duo decided to team up again. Stella and Arya moved in together, pitching it online as two independent women rebuilding their lives. Behind the scenes, it was anything but empowering. At first, they played the part. Wine nights, girls' weekends, endless selfies captioned with new beginnings. But the honeymoon phase of their friendship ended as quickly as Stella's relationship had. Stella was still obsessed with me, still talking about me constantly, still creeping my LinkedIn, still making fake accounts to try to follow my new profiles. Arya was sick of hearing my name. Their arguments, I'm told, were legendary. Arya accused Stella of being stuck in the past. Stella accused Arya of ruining her life by pushing her toward Carson. Money became the next problem. Arya expected Stella to pay half the rent. Stella was still drowning in debt from Carson and barely scraping by. She started forgetting her share of the bills. She bought things she didn't need. Spa treatments, clothes, expensive wine, all on credit she didn't have. The breaking point came one Friday night when Stella invited a group of random guys back to the apartment after a bar crawl. They trashed the living room, broke a lamp, and left beer stains on the rug. Arya lost it. There was a screaming match that had half the building listening through the walls. And by Monday morning, Stella was out, her bags dumped by the front door and her name off the lease. Arya posted a cryptic Instagram story that day. Some people are allergic to responsibility. Hope the couch is comfortable. Now Stella was truly on her own. With no partner, no best friend, and no savings, she moved into a cramped studio in a sketchy part of town. Her job, already unstable, cut her hours. Debt collectors started calling. And yet, despite everything, she was still clinging to the fantasy that I might save her if I knew how bad things had gotten. I didn't. Because I didn't care. While she was spiraling, I was too busy leveling up. My projects at work were performing above target, and I'd started leading quarterly presentations for senior leadership. I took a trip to Denver just because I felt like it. I ran a 10K for the first time in years. Life was steady, focused, and mine, exactly how I wanted it. Stella had built that structure herself, brick by brick, lie by lie, choice by choice. And now she was watching it crumble from the inside. I was too far ahead to see the dust. By the time summer rolled around, my life looked nothing like it had before. Work was on another level. My team had crushed every performance target, and I'd become the person leadership came to when something needed fixing. My calendar wasn't crammed with emotional drama or last-minute damage control anymore. It was packed with meetings, gym sessions, trips, and plans I actually wanted to keep. And then there was Aurora. We'd met at a volunteer event through a mutual friend, a riverside cleanup on a sunny Saturday. She was leading a team with calm confidence, handing out gloves and organizing people with the kind of ease that immediately caught my attention. We started talking during a break and just clicked. No games, no pretenses. Coffee led to dinner, dinner led to weekends together. She had her own ambitions, her own life, and she wasn't looking for someone to fix her or be her project. Being with her was easy. Two independent people choosing to build something together. Meanwhile, Stella had apparently decided she wasn't done with me. She tried guilt. I'm falling apart without you. Please talk to me. I ignored that too. Her last card was Arya. She messaged me on LinkedIn, claiming Stella was in a bad place and needed closure. I replied once, tell her I hope her SoundCloud blows up. Then I blocked her too. But none of that compared to what happened at a mutual friend's wedding later that summer. Aurora and I decided to go together. She wore a deep green dress that turned heads the second we walked in, and I had on a navy suit that actually fit the man I'd become. The vibe was good. Laughter, drinks, conversations with old friends and new faces. Nobody looked at me as Stella's ex anymore. I was just Levi, successful, confident, and moving forward. The invite had gone out months ago, back when Stella and I were still together, but I'd confirmed with the couple that bringing Aurora was fine. I didn't expect Stella to actually show up, but clearly she'd decided to make an appearance anyway. It didn't take long for me to feel eyes on me. Across the room, near the bar, Stella stood gripping a wine glass like it was the only thing holding her together. She was overdressed, over-perfumed, and clearly over the legal alcohol limit. The stare wasn't casual curiosity, it was fixation. For the first hour, she hovered at a distance, whispering furiously to anyone who'd listen. Then the staring turned into pacing. And eventually, she made her move. "Levi," she said, approaching us with a smile too wide and too forced. "Wow, it's been so long." "It has," I said evenly. "Good to see you." Her eyes shifted to Aurora. "And who's this?" "This is Aurora," I said. "My girlfriend." She let out a sharp laugh. "Girlfriend? Right. That was fast, wasn't it? What's it been, 6 months? You move on quick." Aurora gave a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." Stella's smile tightened. "Sure. She's cute. Very basic. But I guess that's your type." The people around us started to turn their heads. A couple near the bar exchanged looks. I didn't react. "Enjoy the evening, Stella," I said calmly. But she wasn't done. "Enjoy the evening?" she repeated, voice rising. "After everything we had, that's all you have to say? You think you can just replace me with this?" She waved a hand toward Aurora, sloshing wine onto the floor. "I built you. I made you into the man you are. And now you're parading around like some success story?" Dozens of eyes were on us now. Aurora stayed perfectly composed, which only seemed to fuel Stella's meltdown. "You think she's going to stick around?" she spat. "Please, give it time. She'll see you're still the same boring guy. Maybe then you'll come crawling back." I stepped a little closer, lowered my voice. "Stella, I'm not crawling anywhere. And you're making a scene. You should stop." She let out a bitter laugh. "A scene? This is me telling the truth. Everyone here knows you're still the same pathetic—" "Stella." A friend of hers appeared, trying to tug her arm. "You need to stop. Now." She yanked her arm free. "No! He needs to hear this." But the damage was already done. People were whispering. A few were shaking their heads. Someone near the bar actually snorted laughing when she said, "I built you." Her attempt to humiliate me had flipped, and now she was the spectacle. "Good luck, Levi," she hissed, finally storming off, wine glass still in hand. "You're going to need it." Aurora raised an eyebrow as we watched her stumble away. "That happen often?" "Not usually in formal wear," I said, and we both laughed. The rest of the night went on like nothing had happened. We danced, we talked, we built new connections. Stella was reduced to background noise, a cautionary tale whispered about in corners. That's when it really clicked for me. Revenge isn't always dramatic. It's not a speech or a takedown or some elaborate plan. Sometimes it's just standing calmly while the person who thought they broke you proves, in front of everyone, that they broke themselves. Stella had gambled everything for excitement, and now here I was, composed, respected, and standing next to a woman who saw my worth without needing to tear me down first. She tried to drag me down to her level that night. Instead, she buried herself. And I didn't need to say a word to make it happen. By early autumn, the gossip about Stella wasn't whispers anymore. It was headlines in the small, interconnected world of people we once knew. She'd been circling the drain for months, and now she was fully underwater. Carson was long gone. Apparently, after draining her credit cards and borrowing several $1,000s for new studio gear, he disappeared. No calls, no texts, no explanations, just gone. Last anyone heard, he'd moved to another state with the bandmate he'd cheated on her with. Arya had finally snapped too. Their short-lived roommate experiment, fueled by cheap wine and self-pity, had ended with Arya tossing Stella's clothes into the hallway after one too many late rent payments and a ruined couch from yet another of Stella's girls' nights. Arya moved on with a new friend group, and Stella was left scrambling for a place to stay. She ended up in a cramped studio on the edge of town, the kind of place where the elevator barely worked and the neighbors screamed through the walls. Her hours at work were cut, and without Carson's phantom income, she couldn't keep up. Debt collectors started calling. Eventually, she was fired for missing too many shifts. That's when the spiral went from sad to messy. Mutual friends started sending me screenshots. Not because I asked, but because the whole thing was too entertaining to ignore. First, there were her Instagram stories. They started with vague self-love quotes about healing and growth. Then, they turned bitter. Long rants about men who pretend to be good guys but are actually manipulative. One post even tagged me directly. "Funny how some people act like they're better than you when you built them. Enjoy the life I helped you create." It got worse. She began oversharing details of our relationship online, twisting events into melodrama for sympathy. She painted herself as the victim of an emotionally unavailable man who abandoned her when she needed him most. Some of her followers ate it up, Most just watched the train wreck unfold. Then she started trying to rewrite history. In a now-deleted post, she claimed she was the one who ended things because he wasn't ambitious enough. Another accused me of using her for stability. None of it stuck. People remembered too much, and too many knew the real story. Every lie was met with sarcastic comments or laughing emojis. But the lowest point came in the form of a podcast. Yes, Stella started a podcast. It was called Real Talk with Stella, and the first episode was titled When They Don't Deserve You. I wouldn't have known about it if a friend hadn't sent me the link with a laughing emoji. The entire 45-minute rant was about me. She didn't even bother hiding it. She used the nickname The Operator, but anyone who knew us could connect the dots in about 10 seconds. It was a mix of half-truths, revisionist history, and delusional takes about how I'd held her back and feared her independence. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I made it about 10 minutes in before I started laughing too hard to continue. That's the thing about rock bottom. It doesn't always look like sobbing on a doorstep or begging for forgiveness. Sometimes it's a person flailing so hard to rewrite their story that they bury themselves deeper with every attempt. Still, Stella wasn't done. She tried a new approach, not begging, but baiting. She showed up at an industry networking event I was speaking at. I saw her before she saw me, cheap champagne in one hand, phone in the other, circling the room like a vulture. When she finally spotted me, she strutted over with a fake confidence that was almost impressive. "Well, look who's here," she said. "Mr. Big Shot." "Stella," I said politely, "didn't expect to see you here." "I wasn't going to come," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "But then I thought, why should I avoid a room just because you're in it?" "By all means," I said. "Enjoy the event." She scoffed. "I see you're still playing corporate hero. Must be nice having people who actually believe your whole perfect act." "Must be," I said, and walked away. That interaction lasted less than a minute, but the fallout was immediate. People had seen it. The bitterness, the desperate energy. One colleague pulled me aside later and asked, "Is she okay?" "Ex-girlfriend," I said with a shrug. "Think she's auditioning for a reality show." By the time the next quarter rolled around, Stella had become a punchline in the circles we used to share. People joked about her influencer era and the X podcast. Most had unfollowed her altogether. The woman who once thought she was too good for me couldn't even keep an audience for her sob story. And me? I barely noticed anymore. My focus was on the future, a project expansion I was leading, a trip Aurora and I were planning, the half marathon I'd impulsively signed up for. Stella's name stopped coming up altogether. The final update I got, months later, came through a mutual acquaintance. She was moving back in with her parents. She'd lost the apartment, sold most of her things, and was taking a break from work. It was poetic. She'd tried everything: manipulation, blame, revisionist history, even public humiliation, and none of it mattered. The story she'd been desperate to control had written itself. Rock bottom isn't always a single event. Sometimes it's a long series of choices that end in a life so small it can't touch the one you left behind. And for Stella, that was the final chapter of the chaos she'd built. For me, it was just another reminder that I was already living in the next one. By winter, I hadn't thought about Stella in weeks. Her podcast had fizzled out, her social media presence was a ghost town, and people had stopped bringing her up altogether. It was like she'd vanished. And for me, that was enough. She was gone, and my life had never been better. Then, one rainy Thursday, my phone buzzed with a notification I almost never saw anymore. An email to an old account I'd stopped checking months ago. The subject line, "Please, Levi." I'd been doing a quarterly cleanup of old accounts and subscriptions when I saw it sitting there, unread, along with 6 others from her over the past 2 weeks. For a second, I considered deleting it unopened. But curiosity won. The message was long, nearly a novel, and every line dripped with desperation. Carson, it turned out, had taken everything. He'd convinced her to open 2 joint credit cards for emergencies, which he then maxed out before disappearing. Between that and her old debt from when we were together, she was buried. He'd pawned her jewelry, taken her savings, and vanished to another state. She was broke, facing eviction, and drowning in debt collectors. "I know I don't deserve anything," she wrote, "but you were always my safe place. I miss us. Maybe we could try again. We were good together once. We could be again. Please, Levi. I need you." It was the first time she'd said the quiet part out loud. I need you, not I love you, not I miss you. Need. Like I was a resource, a bailout plan. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then closed the tab and went back to work. 2 days later, another email arrived, then another. By the end of the week, there were 7 in total. The final one wasn't even pretending anymore. I'm losing everything. You're the only person who ever cared about me. Please don't abandon me. This time I responded. Meet me at Redwood Cafe. Sunday, 11 a.m. I don't know what she thought that meant. Maybe she assumed I was finally caving. Maybe she believed there was still a version of me that would fix things for her. But that version of me died the night she opened the door for Carson. Sunday morning was cold and gray. I got there a few minutes early, grabbed a black coffee, and chose a seat by the window. At 11:06, she walked in. If the past year had aged me, it had buried her. She looked hollow, pale, thinner, dressed in a coat that had seen better days. Her eyes darted around nervously before locking on me. Levi, she breathed, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for coming. Stella, I gave her a polite nod. You said you wanted to talk. She launched into her story like a dam breaking. Carson had disappeared without a trace. She'd lost her job. She was weeks from eviction. Her parents were refusing to bail her out again. She had nothing left. At first, it was all sadness and regret. I made the biggest mistake of my life, she whispered. I should have never left you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Then it turned into bargaining. Maybe we could just start over. Clean slate. I've changed. I know you're with someone, but maybe we can rebuild. Then came the entitlement. You owe me something, Levi. After everything I did for you. After everything we were. You can't just walk away and watch me suffer. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I just watched as the desperation unraveled into blame, and blame crumbled into silence. When she finally ran out of words, I leaned back in my chair. You told Arya I was too boring to leave you, I said calmly. That I'd stay no matter what you did. Turns out you were wrong on both counts. Her face went pale. I didn't mean... You meant it, I cut her off. And you were wrong. Boring guys don't explode. They don't beg. They just walk away. And they don't come back. Please, she whispered. I'm begging you. I shook my head. I'm not your rock. I'm not your plan B. I'm someone who built a life without you in it. A life I love. Your chaos isn't my concern anymore. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're just going to walk away? Yes, I said simply. Because I already did. I stood, left a $5 bill on the table for my coffee, and walked out. Behind me, she was still sitting there, shoulders shaking, the weight of every choice she'd made pressing down on her. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street smelled like wet pavement and fresh air, the kind of cold, clean winter morning that makes you feel alive. Aurora was parked across the street, leaning against her car with a takeaway cup in hand. How'd it go? She asked. Exactly how it needed to, I said. She handed me the cup and smiled. Ready to go? Yeah, I said, taking her hand. Let's go. As we walked away, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing. People think revenge is about getting even, about making them hurt the way they hurt you. But that's not it. Revenge is walking past the wreckage they created and realizing you feel absolutely nothing. Stella wasn't my unfinished chapter. She was the book I stopped reading because the plot went nowhere. And now, finally, the story was over. I didn't leave her with anger or hatred or even satisfaction. I left her with something far more powerful. Indifference. And that's the kind of ending no apology, no sob story, and no second chance can undo. Because in the end, revenge isn't watching them suffer. It's realizing their suffering isn't, and never will be, your problem. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.